Okay, are you guys ready to now turn that into an essay? Okay, I'm going to go into Google Docs. Now, what you are not trying to do is to make this a beautiful essay. This is a rough draft. What they are looking for is evidence that given enough time, you could polish this into something that is absolutely stunningly beautiful. But what we need to show good thought. We need to show that we understand the Margaret Thatcher piece. And we need to show that we can have enough high-level vocab and high-level grammar that the reader has confidence that if we had time, we could polish this into a real showpiece. So, as always, I'm going to start with what exactly is my thesis. So, there we go. In her, and it's stuck, eulogy. I love this. My computer is not typing. I type, it waits. Okay, Margaret Thatcher. Oh, this is going to get old. This is going to get old really quick. ER. Come on. ER. Come on. Okay. This is why they're going to give you 40 minutes to write, and then there is a 5-minute period where you can upload your paper. And some people are going to be really, really tempted to write for 44 minutes and say, oh, I can get my paper to upload in 60 seconds. Please don't do that. Give the computer time, because sometimes, like our computers, they stick. It's going to suck really bad if you have a stunningly beautiful essay and you only give yourself like a minute to upload it, and then the computer sticks and it doesn't upload, and then you lose all credit. Let's not go there, please. In her eulogy, Margaret Thatcher argues that Ronald Reagan was an effective leader for America during the Cold War. And that should be capitalized. During the Cold War. By characterizing him both as a figure of humor and lightness, as well as an imposing leader with firm morals, she drives this message home to her audience, who have gathered to say final farewells to the late president. Now, I have split my thesis into two. Here is my message. Here are the two things I'm going to discuss. That's fine. They do not care. However, if you notice, I also do not have a hook. Now, this one kind of begs for a historical context hook. I hope you guys know enough about the Cold War to be able to do that. However, you could also quite easily use Kierkegaard, the idea that it's the individual who is right, that the individual must stand out from society, not follow it. So you could certainly talk about Reagan being the moral person in the Kierkegaard sense of not following the crowd, but standing out front. You could use Plato and that idea of walking out of the cave. any of those kinds of hooks would work, but I'm going to save it for last, because if I run out of time, I would rather run out of time and not write a good hook than I would run out of time on a body paragraph. Now, here is where the advantage really comes from using my notes. Because I'm going to be using my notes, I'm starting up here. Because I'm using my notes, I don't have to search for where these phrases are, and I'm not going to be tempted to summarize the eulogy to readers because I don't have the eulogy in front of me. So, tab. Thatcher both starts and ends the eulogy by focusing on the more easygoing aspects of Reagan's personality. She talks about how he was cheerful and invigorating, with a freshness I can't actually see my own screen. There it is. I need to do some scrolling. There we go. With a freshness and optimism. And she that seems to match her use of the informal Ronnie when describing the president. As always, we still have a CER format. So my claim that she's using the easygoing aspects of personality to push her message. My evidence, I just gave you all the evidence. And now I can go back and spell the evidence right. I'm telling you, the computer is freezing on me here. Now I need commentary. What is the impact of this language on the listener? Go back to the rhetorical triangle. Americans are likely used to hearing about the Cold War president who held his ground against the Soviets. But by using these descriptions, Thatcher made it clear that his greatness came from his ability to embrace both humor and power. Other presidents were equally quick to stand up against communism. However, by using these lighter descriptions, such as lightness of spirit, Thatcher distinguishes Reagan from presidents like Eisenhower and Nixon. So I'm using a bit of contrast. I'm keeping it centered around the rhetorical triangle, but I'm contrasting her description against what a description would have looked like for someone else. Distinguishes Reagan. Her argument is that Reagan was the great leader because he could embrace this. Void. She talks about how he took enemies and turned them into friends through sincere cooperation and by making this the opening and ending of her speech, she drives home the point that his greatness was not centered in only his position of power, but also in his good spirit. Despite this focus on the positive, Thatcher never forgets. Oh, by the way, please take a look up there. Okay. Here's my evidence. Okay. I then go into my commentary and I bounce back between commentary and evidence a little bit, and that's fine. So Americans are likely used to hearing about the Cold War president. This is a reference to the audience that she's speaking to. By using these descriptions, Thatcher made it clear that his greatness, message. You've got to come back to message over and over again. The message is that she's arguing he's an effective leader, that his greatness. Now, here's where I talk about the evidence, the humor. Other presidents were equally quick to stand up against communism. I got a little bit of contrast commentary. However, by using these lighter descriptions, and you can see referencing the evidence, bringing in a little bit more evidence, and you can do that. Distinguishes Reagan from presidents, okay, contrast. Her argument is Reagan is the great leader. There's my message. Because he can avoid being overly serious. I'm talking about, hey, that's what this evidence is doing. So I'm not talking about evidence in general. I'm saying this evidence, his lightness of spirit, his cheerfulness, his invigorating optimism, this evidence avoids being overly serious. This evidence is a lighter description. This evidence is humor. And this evidence is what makes him a great leader. And I still can't spell. She drives home the point that his greatness. So you can see how many times in that commentary I reference the fact that this evidence is important. And you can see how many times I bring it back to that message of great leader, great leader, great leader. Okay, so that's my first body paragraph. Really, I only have one CER. I just have some extra backing in there, and that's fine. I only need one CER in a timed writing. Despite this focus on the positive, Margaret Thatcher never forgets that Reagan's greatness greatness. I'm coming back to that same main idea that he is an effective leader, that he's a great leader, that Reagan's greatness and his effectiveness as a leader also comes from his ability to stand firm and refuse to compromise when the situation demanded it. She describes his firm principles and how he brought a renewed faith in America's mission of freedom. Apostrophes are good. She might have liked the humorous man she called Ronnie, but she makes it clear that his effectiveness also comes from his ability, from his stronger personality traits, from being candid and tough, and even unyielding when the situation demanded it. Okay, so I've pulled in a lot of evidence. Now, if you notice, the nice thing is with this, those all came from different places. But because all I'm looking at is this right here, my notes, I'm not tempted to tell you the whole phrase. I'm not tempted to tell you the context because, quite frankly, I don't remember the context. I just know my notes are here. Okay, she might have liked the humorous man. And you know, it almost sounds like she doesn't like the firmer man. And so I'm going to edit that. She liked the humorous man she called Ronnie, but she makes clear that a good deal of his effectiveness also comes from his stronger personality traits, including being candid and tough and even unyielding when the situation demands it. Okay. What is the effect of this language on the reader? Because remember, we're going back to Aristotle's triangle. This language makes it clear that Ronald Reagan never compromised when he felt he had to stand firm. Unlike another who might compromise, who might use humor to avoid a situation, Reagan used humor to set the country at ease. But he stood firm when confronting enemies. In this eulogy, Thatcher's repetition of these strong descriptions makes it clear that Reagan changed the world. He took the daunting historic task of confronting communism, the evil empire, and the Soviet drive for military power and territorial expansion. And he stood firm against it all. Her admiration is clear not only in how she describes Reagan, but also in the terms she uses to describe how strong an enemy he faced. Because the evil empire was such a power in the world, Reagan had to be an even stronger power to end the Cold War without firing a single shot. Her admiration shines clear when she describes his ability to do exactly that. Okay, so again, what is the message? That he's an effective leader. So there is where I'm talking about my evidence. What is my evidence this time? My evidence this time is that he is standing firm. Okay, so he is effective because he's going to be firm. Yoo-hoo. Underline. What are you doing? There you go. So up here, he's effective because of his lighter traits. Here, he's effective because he's strong. Okay? He is strong. He is strong. And that is why he is effective. He is strong. And that makes him effective. She admires him because he has an ability. So again, if you look at the bolding, I am constantly coming back to that message of he is an effective leader. He is an effective leader. Now, when I go back and look at this, here's the really nice thing. Because we're typing it, it is way easier to edit and make changes. I am now looking at this. Okay, Ronald Reagan was an effective leader for America during the Cold War. It's not just that he was an effective leader, it's that his power as a leader is what made it possible to end the Cold War. So now that I've written my body paragraphs, I'm saying my thesis is actually not strong enough. That Ronald Reagan was such a powerful leader for America during the Cold War that he made it possible for democracy to win that battle of wills. Okay, I like that much stronger. Now I can write my conclusion. Throughout this eulogy, Margaret Thatcher effectively argues, really Thatchery, that Reagan uses both humor and a strength and unyielding in order to win the Cold War. If I'm out of time, that is where I stop. If I have time, I'm now going to go back and I'm going to do my intro, my conclusion. I'm going to try and zhuzh it up a little bit with some semicolons, some dashes, some good vocab to try and get that extra point. Right now, this is going to get probably 3 points on argument, 1 point on the thesis. So I'm looking at 4 points. This is going to earn my free college credit. But if I have time, why not zhuzh? Soren Kierkegaard once wrote, Kierkegaard claimed that truth was never found in a crowd because crowds lacked responsibility, they bred blind followers and mistakes. In the case of Thatcher's eulogy of Reagan, there is my transition to the bottom, but for that to be a good transition, I have to bring Kierkegaard into the same sentence with Reagan. In the case of Margaret Thatcher's eulogy of Ronald Reagan, she seems to argue that Reagan did what Kierkegaard so admired. He walked away from the crowd and found truth and justice in being a leader. In her eulogy, Margaret Thatcher argues that Ronald Reagan was such a powerful leader for America during the Cold War that he made it possible for democracy to win that battle of wills. By characterizing him both as a figure of humor and lightness, as well as an imposing leader with firm morals, she drives this message home to her audience, to the audience, that's singular, that has gathered to say final farewells to the late president. Okay. Reagan using... Had Reagan blindly followed the path of previous presidents, he might not have led the country to victory. Or at least that is what Thatcher argues. She presents Reagan as a leader that Kierkegaard could admire. Okay. Now, let's zhuzh up in the middle. Do I have time? Then I'm going to zhuzh and make it pretty. You know what? I didn't start the timer. I don't know what time I'm on. Don't do that when you're doing your actual AP test. Thatcher both starts and ends the eulogy by focusing on the more, I don't like easygoing aspects of Reagan's personality. On the less warlike Marshall. Marshall is better than warlike, and it means the same thing. On the less martial aspects of Reagan's personality, she talks about, describes. Why? Because two-word verbs are always informal. Talks about, describes. She describes how he's cheerful and invigorating with a freshness and optimism that seems to match her use of the informal Ronnie when describing the president. Americans are likely I don't like that. Passive voice, and it's just clunky. History books describe Reagan as the Cold War president who held his ground against Soviets, but by using these not casual descriptions, but by cheerful, invigorating, freshness, optimism, positive descriptions. If I have time, I may replace that positive with something more specific, but I can't quite grasp what I'm going for. Thatcher made it clear that his greatness came from his ability to embrace both humor and power. Other presidents were equally quick to stand up against communism, stand up against, denounce. Oof. I like that. However, by using these lighter descriptions, such as lightness of spirit, lightness, that's not working. What do I mean by lighter? Okay, other presidents were quick to denounce, but by using these descriptions, friendlier descriptions, such as lightness of spirit, Thatcher distinguishes Reagan from presidents like Eisenhower and Nixon. Her argument is that Reagan was a great leader because he could embrace his ability to avoid being overly serious. She talks about how he took enemies and turned them into friends through sincere cooperation. By making this the opening and ending of her speech, she drives home the point that his greatness was not centered only in his position of power, but also in his good spirit. Where'd my thing? Positive. Optimistic. Despite this focus on the positive, Thatcher never forgets that Reagan's greatness and his effectiveness, why just say greatness? Effectiveness as a leader also comes from his ability to stand firm. Stand firm, refuse to compromise, same thing. Yeah, just repeat yourself. When the situation demanded it. She describes his firm principles and how he brought a renewed faith in America's. She liked the humor. Okay, I don't know that. I am judging her mind, and I can't do that. I don't know if she likes him or not. But I can say her language makes it clear. That his effectiveness also comes from his stronger personality traits, from being candid and tough and even unyielding when the situation demanded it. This language makes it clear. Did I not just say makes it clear? Yes, I did. Okay. This language drives home the point, or the pont, that Ronald Reagan never compromised when he felt he had to stand firm. Unlike another who might use humor to avoid taking a stand, Reagan used humor to set the country at ease, but he stood firm when confronting enemies. In this eulogy, Thatcher's repetition of these strong descriptions suggests Reagan changed the world, which is part of effectiveness. He took the daunting historic task of confronting communism, the evil empire, and the Soviet drive for military power and expansion, and he stood firm against it all. Her admiration is clear not only in how she describes Reagan, but also in the terms she used to describe how daunting an enemy he faced. Because the evil empire was such a power in the world, Reagan had to be an even stronger power to end the Cold War without firing a single shot. Okay, so I definitely know my time is up. I don't actually know how long I've been writing because I didn't start the timer. Don't follow my example on that. However, you can now see I have my full essay. So that is how I've been doing it. I was actually timing myself as I did this with some practices. I got it down to where I could do it in 40 minutes every time, but it will take some practice. So that's what we're going to do this week. See you soon. Now I got to figure out how to turn this off. Come on. You can do it, computer. Computer. Thank you.